For those of you that are participating in the seminar and are not familiar with the Florida Airports Council, I'd like to provide an overview of our association prior to introducing Michael. FAC was formed in 1969 as the Florida Airport Managers Association as the voice of airports in the state of Florida. We currently have a membership of 19 commercial service airports, 75 general aviation airports, and well over 200 corporate, educational, and affiliate members, as well as 2 student chapters at Florida Tech and Embry-Riddle. In addition to our other goals, FAC and the Education Foundation that we also operate is focused on providing educational opportunities to help all of our members become the best they can be in their professional lives. Over the past few years, FAC has conducted 27 educational seminars on topics of concern to the airport industry in Florida. These seminars have been videotaped and provided to all the publicly owned and operated airports in our state. And today, working with CUTR, we're considering the webinar format for educational program delivery. I want to personally thank Jennifer and Michael with CUTR for their assistance and leadership in providing the webcast. After the webcast is over, I would like to hear from each participant by email with your comments about whether you feel FAC should pursue additional webinars in the future and what topics you would like to hear more about. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker, Michael Odino. Michael is a senior researcher with CUTR, adjunct faculty member in the College of Engineering, where he spearheads the center's airport-related research and educational initiatives, facilitates and develops strategic and operational plans, designs and implements communications and public outreach initiatives, develops and delivers educational seminars, and leads applied research and special project initiatives for a variety of aviation and public transportation clients. He's an Airport Cooperative Research Program ambassador. He's a member of the ACRP Speakers Bureau and has served on numerous project panels. Prior to joining USF, Michael served as the State Aviation Officer for the Iowa DOT and Director of Marketing and Business Development for the Des Moines International Airport. His career includes service as a business retention specialist for the Des Moines Chamber of Commerce, Executive Director of Southwest Iowa Planning Council, Program Manager for the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, and Program Planner for Dynatrend Incorporated. He has a master's degree in business leadership from Upper Iowa University and a BS degree in community and regional planning from Iowa State. And for those of you that have taken one of the airport leadership development classes offered by FAC in partnership with CUTR and FDOT, you know that Michael is one of the 2 instructors for that class. The 3rd leadership development class is scheduled for September 14th through 16th of this year on the campus of USF. And now, Michael, or should I say Mr. Ambassador, I will mute my speaker and turn the program over to you.
Well, Bill, thank you very, very much for that warm introduction. Very, very kind of you, buddy. Appreciate that a lot. Jennifer, also, my gratitude to you for helping, as always, put this together and taking care of all the details so that Bill and I are able to navigate the system. And thanks to all of you who have carved time out of your busy schedules to join us today for this webinar. As Bill referenced, this is a collaborative effort between the Florida Airports Council, Florida DOT, and CUTR. And reiterating what Bill asked, following today's webcast, if you would be kind enough to let Bill know your thoughts and responses, reactions to the webinar, whether it's met your needs, and if yes, the types of topics that you might want to learn about in the future. Today we're going to talk about the Airport Cooperative Research Program, and there are 3 primary messages that I'm hoping to deliver today and that you can take away. One is that I'm hoping to provide you with a richer understanding of what ACRP is all about. Looking at the list of attendees on the webinar, I know some of you are intimately familiar with ACRP, and so much of what I say may be redundant. I'm assuming there may be a few of you who are relatively new to the ACRP program and initiative, and so there may be a lot of new information today, but I'm confident that all of you will derive something from today's time that you can take away and will be new knowledge for you. So I want to provide an overview of ACRP. I want to talk a lot about, frankly, opportunities for your involvement in ACRP. And then lastly, I'd like to talk about some of the impacts that ACRP has had on the airport community and airport industry, and elaborate a little bit more on a topic Bill mentioned, which is the Airport Leadership Development Initiative, which, again, comes out of the ACRP program and is another example of the Florida DOT, Florida Airports Council, and CUTR collaboration. So those are the three primary topics for our time together today. So let's begin with the basics. What is ACRP? Well, at the end of the day, ACRP is fundamentally a industry-driven, which means it's driven by airports throughout the country. It's industry-driven. It's an applied research program which is intended to provide, as the slide says, near-term, short-term, real-world practical solutions to problems that are faced by airports and airport operators. The ACRP program began in 2005, 2006, but had its origin back in 2003. It was actually authorized as part of the Vision 100 Century of Aviation Reauthorization Act of 2003. And to help you, or provide a little richer context, think of a flow chart, if you will. And at the bottom of that flow chart is ACRP, okay? Immediately above ACRP is TRB, or the Transportation Research Board. Immediately above TRB is the National Research Council. And at the top of the flow chart and above National Research Council is the National Academy of Sciences. I share that with you to put the ACRP program in perspective. ACRP is part of the Transportation Research Board. Transportation Research Board is part of the National Research Council, and the National Research Council is part of the National Academy of Sciences, which was established way back in 1863 by President Abraham Lincoln. So in the big picture scheme of things, the work that ACRP is doing today, in some ways, shapes, and forms, relates back to the role that President Lincoln played in this country 160 years ago. So I think it's always important to kind of understand the context in which we're operating. As I mentioned, the ACRP was authorized in 2003 as part of the Vision 100 Century of Aviation Reauthorization Act, and that legislation established the governance structure for the ACRP program. This slide on your screen and the next one, I'm going to flip back and forth between those two slides, but the primary participants in ACRP are, one, the ACRP Oversight Committee, which is the independent governing board. The members, who are listed on this slide and the ensuing slide, are appointed by the appointed by the Secretary of the U.S. DOT, U.S. Department of Transportation. And as you can see, representation comes primarily from the airport industry, but also includes representation from a variety of stakeholder groups, including Airports Council International, ACI, AAAE, the SAO, and a few other organizations. So again, the governance of ACRP provided primarily by the ACRP Oversight Committee, and you can see we have Steve Grossman from Jacksonville Aviation Authority, one of our own, serves on that Oversight Committee. And in addition, the program, you have the Oversight Committee that provides governance. The TRB, as I've already mentioned, serves as the program manager, and then funding for the program and for the research is provided by the Federal Aviation Administration. In terms of the research, there are 11 areas in which the ACRP research is categorized, and those are listed in front of you there. I won't go into detail on any one of them, but I'd like to share just a little bit of information with you. And since the program began in 2005-2006 through the 2013 timeframe, here are the projects, the number of projects by research category. There have been 25 projects dealing with administration issues, 50 dealing with environmental programs and opportunities, 31 in policy and planning, 19 in safety, 1 security research project, 2 in human resources, 11 in design, 1 in construction, 10 in maintenance, and another 20 projects in operations. And then that last category, special projects, there have actually been 162 different research projects or research reports prepared underneath that. But without going into detail, the special projects category also includes a few sub-programs like the ACRP synthesis and the ACRP legal activities. So just to give you a sense of how the various research reports stack up by category. In terms of how projects are selected, the ideas come from you, frankly. You know, I will talk about that in a little bit more detail here in a few moments. But at the end of the day, as I said, ACRP is industry driven. It's for airports and it's by airports, and it's designed to provide solutions to real world problems. So the effectiveness of the research, the effectiveness of the program depends in large measure on how well you participate and how well you are engaged. So all the research that's done comes from topics that are submitted by research practitioners or industry practitioners like yourselves. You submit an idea or you have a problem, and you submit a problem statement. Those statements are then reviewed by the ACRP program officers. Those statements are then shared with one or more TRB aviation-related committees who also review the problem statements and provide feedback on the merits of each of the problem statements. ACRP then convenes review panels consisting of industry practitioners who evaluate each problem statement and make a recommendation to that oversight committee that I talked about a few moments ago. And then, so the oversight committee really ends up with 2 groups. One, a list of projects that are recommended for funding, and then a list that is not recommended for funding. And ACRP staff submit those problem statements along with the recommendations, along with the supporting comments and materials to that oversight committee. They take that information into consideration, and it's the oversight committee that determines what projects, what problem statements turn into research reports. So that's a quick overview of the ACRP, how the topics are selected. In terms of the process, and again, just in general terms, once the problem statements have been approved by the oversight committee, then a project panel is formed. And again, I'll talk in a little bit more detail about that here in a few moments. The panel's responsibility is pretty straightforward. Formalize the scope of work, issue a request for proposal, and solicit proposals, review proposals, and recommend a contractor to actually do the research, oversee and guide the work of the researcher, and then at the end provide comments and input on the final report. And then once the research results are published, it's incumbent upon the panel member to be responsible to help disseminate the results and share the information with the industry at large. So since 2005-2006, there have been 330 different projects actually authorized, and there are 165 plus publications out there on the ACRP website, which, by the way, is www.trb/ACRP. And one of the many cool things about ACRP is all those reports are free. So money is not a barrier to acquiring these reports and availing yourselves of the real world findings and real world solutions that are in those reports. 700 plus of us. When I say us, I know Bill has participated in the ACRP program. I'm assuming others who are listening in today have also been part of the ACRP program. And 700 of us have been actively engaged since the inception, and we come from airports, airlines, consulting firms representing a wide range of the industry. This slide provides a graphic of the annual, as it says, the annual research cycle, and a couple of dates that I want to point out to you. Project panels are going to be assembled in the July to September time frame, and so I would encourage any of you, and again, I'll talk about panels in a few moments, but I would encourage any of you who might be interested in serving on a panel to give some consideration to that. Also want to point out that in the November or December time frame, requests for proposals will be solicited from consultants, universities, individuals who may be interested in doing some research work. And then in the December through February time frame is when the problem statements will be accepted. So while ACRP will accept problem statements at any time throughout the course of the year, they have an official or more formal time frame where they aggressively and actively and proactively search out problem statements. So if you have an issue at your airport, have an issue that you're looking for a solution for, submitting a problem statement would be an excellent thing to consider. And with that as a segue, I want to talk about 5 specific ways in which you can get involved in the ACRP program. And I cannot emphasize this point enough. At the end of the day, the success of ACRP is driven by active engagement by the airport industry and the airport community. So I strongly encourage you to give thoughtful consideration to these 5 opportunities, because your involvement will make the program better than it already is. So 5 basic ways to get involved. You can submit a research idea or a problem statement, which I've already referenced. You can volunteer to serve on a project panel. You can prepare a research proposal. You can respond to requests for information or complete a survey. Or perhaps most importantly, from my perspective, you can actually use the research results. So let's talk a little bit about a problem statement. I've addressed that a little bit already, but again, the research that's done by ACRP is determined, the topics that are researched are determined by the Oversight Committee. As I stated already, the ideas that the Oversight Committee reviews come in the form of problem statements from the airport community. So if you're interested in submitting a problem statement, here's some things here's some guidance from ACRP. One, it needs to have a statement title, which they prefer to be no lengthier than 10 words. They need some background on the problem, ideally no more than 3 paragraphs, which helps them understand the context for the problem you're identifying and more specific detail on the challenge requiring research. They require some clear objectives, some concise statements in terms of what you anticipate the products that will come out of the research. To the extent that you can identify what tasks are involved, they'd like to see that in the problem statement. How much you would estimate the research to cost, that's always a difficult one. I can tell you that on average, the full ACRP research projects, not the synthesis, but the full research projects are probably in the $200,000 to $300,000 range in terms of total cost. Estimated time to complete the research is another bit of information they ask for in the problem statement. And again, my experience, having served on 3+ project panels now, is that that's typically an 18-month to 24-month time frame. 7th item they hunt for is if you're aware of any other related research or research that's in progress that relates to your problem statement, they'd like you to identify that. And then to the extent that you can identify how your problem statement was developed, whether it was just you, whether it came from your board, a group of colleagues, Florida Airports Council, doesn't particularly matter. They're just looking for the source of the problem statement. So again, if you have an issue, if you have a challenge, if you have a problem, and you don't know what the answers are and you're hunting for solutions, I strongly encourage you to give serious consideration to formulating a problem statement and submitting that to ACRP. Just to give you some statistics as far as, because I know there are people in the audience who like numbers and like statistics. In terms of the problem statements, in the most current year, 2013, there were 89 problem statements submitted, and of those, 53% of those came from the consultant community, with approximately 18% coming from airport operators, and the balance coming from universities, FAA, state DOTs, etc. So I'm not passing judgment, just sharing with you where the problem statements are coming from. And personally, I find it a little bit interesting that a program designed for airports to solve airport operator problems, only 20% of the research ideas in this most current year came from the airport industry. So again, that's me nudging you a little bit to give serious thought to submitting a problem statement. Second way you can get involved is to volunteer to serve on a project panel. And I'm assuming some of you may have already done that. As I mentioned, I've participated in 3 project panels, the one dealing with air service development, the one on workforce development, and most recently the one on airport leadership. I find it to be a wonderful experience to give back to the industry, to share your knowledge, to meet some cool people who you haven't met before. Typical responsibilities, as I mentioned earlier, help formulate the scope of work, review proposals from consultants, provide guidance and oversight as the research is being conducted. In terms of time commitment, a couple of meetings throughout the duration of the project, usually twice in either DC or Southern California. TRB/ACRP covers the cost of your travel, but you donate the cost of your time. But it's like I said, it's a wonderful way to get involved, to share your knowledge and expertise with the industry and to have an impact. Nominations, as it states here, for the project panels will be coming up at the end of this summer. You can self-nominate candidly, but my experience is it's always better to be nominated by someone else, by a colleague. And I know the right, wrong, or indifference, ACRP has a little bit of a bias towards folks who actually work for airports. So I'd encourage you again to give some thought to serving on a project panel. And again, just a couple of numbers of all the project panels that have been formed since ACRP began. There have been upwards of 700 individuals, as I mentioned, I think earlier, who have served in that capacity. And 37% of the project panel members have come from the airport operator community, and 27% have come from the consultant community, and the balance coming from universities, state governments, FAA. So the numbers are somewhat reversed, and from the problem statement submission, you had 18% of problem statements coming from airports, but 37% of project panels being represented by airports. So again, serving on a project panel, great opportunity for you to impact the outcome of the research, meet some interesting colleagues in the industry, and give back to the industry that we all know and love. Third opportunity for you to participate is to submit a proposal. Anybody can submit a proposal. Any individual, agency, university, consultant. May not seem particularly relevant to those of you who are actually working at an airport, but I know in a number of cases, specific airports have served as not so much prime contractors, but as subcontractors. Bill mentioned, as did I, this airport leadership program or research report. And one of the primary contractor there was Ohio State University. One of the subcontractors was the Columbus Airport. So there may be opportunities for you to partner with the university, partner with a consultant firm, and actually submit the proposal to do the work. If you're going to submit a proposal, here are 5 or 6 things that the panel will be looking at. They'll be looking to make sure you fully understand, or how you demonstrate that you understand the research problem. They'll be looking at the merits of your research approach and your design. They'll be taking a look at the experience and qualifications of your team. They'll be taking a look at how you plan to promote the results or your findings throughout the industry. And they'll be also taking a look at the your plan for involving a disadvantaged business enterprise. So those, again, if you're thinking about a proposal submission as a way to get involved in ACRP, submitting a proposal, those are the things that ACRP will take a look at. And I can tell you from personal experience, as the program has evolved and matured, being selected has become more of a problem. Excuse me, not a problem. It's become more of a challenge as competition has increased, and the quality of the proposals and the quality of the research has also improved as time has gone on. So I know from a CUTR USF perspective, I think we've submitted 3 or 4 proposals and a couple of synthesis proposals, and have yet to open the door. So we keep trying, however. Fourth way to participate, and I don't have a slide for this one, is to respond to requests for information or requests to complete surveys or requests to participate in focus groups. Most every research project, most every research team reaches out to the industry and asks for information. And I'm assuming many, if not most of you on the call today, have been asked to complete a survey or have been asked to provide information or have been asked to participate in a focus group. And I know we all at times are burdened with these requests from outside entities, but on behalf of ACRP, when you are asked to do one of those things, respectfully request that you create the time to respond, because again, that's one more way where you can demonstrate your commitment to the program and where you can influence the research outcomes and the research results. The fifth and final way, and as I said earlier, from my perspective, perhaps the most important way for you to get involved in ACRP is to use the research. You know, at the end of the day, a 300-page report, a 200-page report, a 100-page report, length is irrelevant. Regardless of length, it's meaningless if all it does is sits on the shelf. So I encourage everyone to take advantage of the findings that are in these research reports. The project reports tend to be a bit lengthier, as I just referenced. You've got some synthesis reports that are much more brief in terms of length, but which also contain findings that you might be able to utilize. The ACRP website has publications called Impacts on Practice that talk about how other airports have used some of the research findings. That's a value add for you. But I encourage you to, again, if you have an issue and you don't have a solution for it, before you submit a problem statement, visit the ACRP website, search around a little bit. Perhaps there's already been an ACRP report that has answers to the challenges that you face or the problem that you're facing. And if you find something that you like and that's value added to you, I encourage you to share that information with your colleagues. With that, I have a brief little, like a 5-minute video that ACRP has prepared that Jennifer will cue up for us now that'll add a little bit more richness to the topics I just talked about. Thank you, Jennifer. One of the I hope that as you listened and watched that video, you took away the fact that, hey, there are your colleagues in the industry utilize ACRP research results to improve operations at their facilities, whether it's Minneapolis, St. Paul, or Toronto. Lloyd McComb, a McComb fellow ACRP ambassador with me. I mean, I just love the way how he frames the ACRP research reports. It's a university curriculum at your fingertips. And again, all these reports are free and available on the ACRP website. So I want to talk about the remaining two topics. One, how you can utilize or impacts of the ACRP research, and then other ways where you can become engaged. I've got 4 reports that I just want to touch on ever so briefly. The first of them being the Managing Small Airports report, which was published back in July of 2009. And I think the first point I want to make on this one is, in my experience, many airport professionals think of ACRP as being applicable only to the big girls and boys, only the commercial service airports. Quite to the contrary. ACRP does work. The research done and sponsored by ACRP provides solutions to airports of all sizes from all geographic areas. And this particular one, I think Report 16 is a good example of that. If there's anybody in the audience who's involved with managing a small airport, we all understand you wear multiple hats. This report, it's a guidebook, if you will, and provides basic information on everything from airport finance, airport planning and development, public relations, education and training, organizational issues. So again, if you're the public works director and also the airport manager, or if you're the airport manager in the FBO and you're wearing a variety of hats, this is an excellent report that will provide some guidance and some insights into the many issues that you have to deal with as an airport manager. So there's one example of recent research. And quick aside, again, wearing my ACRP ambassador's hat, I spoke in Kansas City last September to a 4-state conference about this very report. And afterwards, I had upwards of 30 people come to me requesting copies of the report because, based on the information I had shared, they realized that there was much value to be derived from that. So, again, applicable to airports of all sizes. Another example of research that is getting a lot of use in the industry is the report published in 2009, Report 20, that deals with strategic planning. This report was spearheaded, the principal investigator was our fellow Floridian Pete Ricondo with Ricondo & Associates. He's Pete's out of the Miami office. And I've seen this report, or the findings in this report, used all across the country. I know that the folks in Boca Raton, Florida, utilized this to help guide their strategic plans. I know that we incorporated some of the findings we incorporate in our airport leadership curriculum. Again, back to that 4-states conference in Kansas City that I referenced, there were a number of airport professionals, primarily from Missouri at the time, with whom I spoke about this very report dealing with strategic planning. And again, the concepts are applicable whether you're a large hub or whether you're a GA airport in Northwest Florida. It doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. So there's lots of good information contained in this report relative to strategic planning. There's also a relatively recent publication dealing with irregular operations report that was published just in February of 2012. I'm not all that familiar with this particular guidebook, but I know in conversation with Mike Salomon from the ACRP program manager, there's been a lot of interest in this report. And it's a resource that helps airports develop contingency plans to address irregular operations. And it includes guidance on topics dealing with checklists. It has worksheets in there. There's a sample irregular operations plan. And again, also there has been, I referenced earlier, I think, these publications called Impacts on Practice. These are specific examples where ACRP finds an airport or a practitioner that's actually used the results and develops like a 1 or 2 page summary of that. There's an impacts on practice on the ACRP website that was published in April of 2013 that talks about how the Fort Wayne International Airport and the Buffalo Niagara International Airport both utilized this ACRP Report 65 dealing with IROPS, how they used that report to add value to their organization. So there's a third example. And the fourth and final example I want to give is one that's Bill's mentioned it, as have I. It's near and dear to our hearts here in Florida. It's the ACRP Airport Leadership Development Program. The reason it's more near and dear to our hearts here is that I think we here in Florida, we in my sentence being Florida Department of Transportation, Florida Airports Council, Florida Airports themselves, and us here at the Center for Urban Transportation Research, have done a pretty darn good job of taking research findings and putting them into practice. We have taken the curriculum that was developed by this or under this research initiative, and we have turned that into a 3.5-day training session. We delivered our first class back in February. Just completed our second class a couple of weeks ago here at USF, and as Bill mentioned, we will be launching a third session in September. The curriculum that was developed by the folks at Ohio State and Direct Effect Solutions, again, as part of an ACR research report, is in the public domain, so anybody can take it and utilize it. But candidly, in my role as the project panel chair and working closely with Mindy Price, who was a principal investigator, and working closely with Bill Johnson and Deb Lemke and Eric Troit and Aaron Smith at FDOT, we said, hey, let's not let this just sit on the shelf. We can do something with this and take the research findings, transfer the findings put in the hands of the practitioners and add some value. So feedback so far to this 3.5-day airport leadership training has been phenomenally positive. And I'm appreciative again of FDOT and FAC and of the Florida airport industry of stepping up and saying, yes, let's take some of these ACRP results and let's put them into practice. So there are 4 examples of research reports that are adding real-world, real-time value to airports, not just in Florida, but in other parts of the country. So additional ways to participate. I've mentioned the impacts on practice a couple of times now. If you have an example at your airport or at some other property where you know an ACRP report, or excuse me, where ACRP report findings have added value, I strongly encourage you to submit that lead to that web address that's there on your screen. And the folks at ACRP may follow up on that and publish that 2-page impact on practice that help others understand how the research findings have been utilized. Another way to participate is apply to become an ACRP ambassador. I'm halfway through my second year as an ACRP ambassador. I was a member of the very first cohort of ambassadors. There were 8 of us. This past January, ACRP inducted another, I think, 6 or 7. So right now there are 15 ACRP ambassadors. But my term comes to an end at the end of this calendar year, and they will be searching for another ambassador for the Southeast region. So if there's anybody listening who has an interest in becoming an ambassador, I strongly encourage you to submit your name. Again, an ambassador is, as kind of the name suggests, your role is to help introduce and familiarize the industry with what ACRP is all about, and just spread the good word and spread the goodwill, if you will. Another way to participate is ACRP does have a speakers bureau, so you may want to check that out. And if you've served on a project panel, if you've conducted research, if you are an expert in any of the fields that the ACRP research reports deal with, you might be selected to serve as part of their speakers bureau. I want to make you aware of an upcoming ACRP webinar. This isn't something that we at CUTR or FAC or FDOT are sponsoring, but again, back to the ACRP website, a wealth of information. I don't know to what extent this particular July 10th topic is of interest to those of you in the audience today, but again, want to make you aware of that, encourage you to visit the ACRP website, encourage you to pay attention to the information that's contained there and the many resources that are available to you on that site. For those of you who might be more plugged into the social media world than others, ACRP is also active both on Facebook and LinkedIn, and it's an opportunity for you to participate in online discussions, for you to talk about some of the successes that you've had with ACRP reports, some of the ways that you've used the findings. In fact, if you're so inclined, you could even post a comment later today on this particular webcast and how value added that was to your professional world. So if you're, like I said, if you're into the social media arena, so is ACRP, and I encourage you to check out both their LinkedIn and Facebook pages. There's the ACRP website. I think I may have misspoke earlier when I gave that to you. It's trb.org/ACRP. And as I've said several times now, it provides information on the latest research reports, upcoming opportunities for submitting proposals, upcoming opportunities for applying to be an ambassador, upcoming opportunities to volunteer to serve on a project panel, all the things that I've spoken about already today. So with that, I, on behalf of Bill, thank all of you for participating, and I know we have a few minutes for some questions, and so I'll turn it back over to Jennifer, and I'll do my best to respond to any questions anyone might have.
Thanks, Michael. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. The first one is, do you need to have any specific credentials to be a panel member?
I wouldn't identify any specific credentials, Jennifer. I think a couple of basics. As I think I said early on, the panels are typically comprised of representatives, from airports, from the consultant world, occasionally from FAA and state DOTs. I'd probably steer people, if they were interested in serving on a panel, steer them towards topics in which they have either some experience or some familiarity. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, more experience tends to be looked on more favorably than less experience. But so again, familiarity with the research topic, experience in the industry, and if you have some connections, oftentimes it's not just what you know, it's also who you know. And if you have some colleagues that could perhaps co-recommend you or serve as a recommendation on your behalf, that's always helpful as well.
Okay, great. Another question, how can someone register for the upcoming Airport Leadership Development course?
Well, we are working with we in my sentence being the University of South Florida, and those of us here at the Center for Urban Transportation Research. Part of our role is managing the registration. We're working closely with our continuing education folks here at USF. Hopefully, we will have that information live early next week. I can't give specifics at this moment in time simply because I'm waiting for some additional details from the folks over there at the continuing education. But once that information is available, we will be working very closely with Bill Johnson and Deb Lemke and the folks at FAC who've done an extraordinary job in promoting the first two classes, and I'm totally confident they will do an extraordinary job in promoting the third class. If anybody at this stage, if anybody has an interest in signing up, I would encourage them to either email Bill Johnson or myself, and I believe our emails will appear again before our webinar is over. So that's the best information I can give at this moment in time, Jennifer.
Hey, yeah, Michael, it's Bill. I would like to add that this is, at this time, since we've only had a couple of classes, this is for airport employees only. So if anybody is interested, you're an airport employee, send me an email and, your telephone number, and we can talk about it.
Thank you, Bill.
Nice job on the presentation. Jennifer didn't think you could make it last for 50 minutes, and look what you've done.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. As a volunteer, doesn't ACRP pay for your travel for meetings?
Yes, ACRP does pay for the travel. Typically, I'm just, from my personal experience, these project panel meetings will typically begin at 8:30 in the morning and conclude anywhere between 4:30 and 5:30 in the afternoon. So again, from my perspective, I typically will fly up the night before. Sometimes we'll fly out the night of the panel meeting, but occasionally you end up staying 2 nights. ACRP pays for your airfare. ACRP pays for the hotel. ACRP reimburses for ground transportation, not a rental car, but the metro in DC or cab, and they reimburse for meals. So basically, every out-of-pocket cost that you incur, ACRP reimburses you for. Again, the most valuable thing that you're volunteering is your time, and they do not compensate you for that. But all other out-of-pocket costs are covered by ACRP. So from a financial perspective, they do their best to make it as painless as they possibly can.
Great. Another question from an attendee is, what coordination is there with the other CRP programs such as NCHRP and TCRP? An example would be transit access to airports.
That's a wonderful question. I wish I had a wonderful answer for that question. I don't know. I guess I could argue that there's probably some going on, but like the project that you mentioned, I don't know who's on the panel. I would hope that there's some coordination that exists. I don't think I said this, but the ACRP program is modeled after both the Transit Cooperative Research Program and the Highway Cooperative Research Program. But I'm not aware of any formalized coordination procedures that exist that ensure that an airport research project that may have a transit bent. I don't know if there's anything that formally states that there has to be somebody on the panel. So as you can tell, I'm kind of I'm wandering a little bit here because I don't have a specific answer. I apologize for that. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll have some dialogue with the ACRP folks, and I can capture that answer, and I can communicate that out to the individual who posed the question.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have someone who'd like to know a little bit more about the ACRP Ambassador Program. Can you talk about that a little bit further?
Yeah, I can, Jennifer. Again, this is an initiative that began, what's it been, 2 years ago now. Let me back up even further. 3 or 4 years ago, ACRP concluded that they needed the oversight committee, a group of folks that includes Steve Grossman from Jacksonville. That oversight committee concluded that ACRP needed to do a better job of and invest more resources in disseminating the research findings. So they implemented the impacts on practice, which I talked about. And interestingly enough, just as an FYI, the first 3 impacts on practice we here at CUTR actually authored and produced for ACRP. So that was one of the dissemination and outreach activities. Another big one was the formation of the Ambassador Program. So a couple years ago now, they being ACRP, solicited applications from folks across the country who were willing and interested in serving as an ambassador. And again, the role of an ambassador is to be knowledgeable of the ACRP program and be willing to travel to conferences and speak about the ACRP program. ACRP has a couple of booths that, if any of you have been to trade shows, you know of what I speak. These booths get set up and information is mailed from DC to wherever the location is. Like in my case, I mentioned I was in Kansas City last September. The folks in DC shipped the booth out to me. I set up the booth. I displayed a bunch of reports. I spoke at the conference and then made sure that all of what was left in terms of reports and that the booth itself got shipped back home. But again, you're serving in a goodwill capacity. They being ACRP provides. This one's a little different. They will compensate you for your hotel, your lodging up to a limit, but they do not pay for transportation. They do not pay for time. So being an ambassador requires not only a significant commitment of time, but also a slightly greater investment of financial resources. And with the ambassadors, there's one per FAA region. when the program began, that first cohort that I was a member of, I was given the central region because they didn't have anybody that volunteered, and in part because I come out of the central region, having served in Iowa for several years. But as I said, my term expires at the end of this calendar year, and so they will be looking for a new ambassador here in the southeast region. So I think I remember everybody on the call today is from Florida. If you're interested in being an ambassador, I know they typically they like to look for people who are, or select people who are at airports or from airports. Clearly I'm not, but I know many people on the call today are from airports. So if anybody out there is interested in being ambassador, likes to travel a little bit, likes to speak in front of groups, is willing to share the good word about ACRP, it's a wonderful opportunity. And again, the way I frame it, a great opportunity to give back to an industry that's been good to all of us. So that's a little bit more about the ambassador program, Jennifer.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Those are all of the questions. Actually, one more question just came in, so if you have time, I'll go ahead and pose that one. Do you know if the sequester is affecting or will affect the TRB? What can we do to keep promoting funding this valuable resource?
I've not heard anything from the ACRP program manager or any of the ACRP staff regarding sequestration and its potential impact on the ACRP program. That said, any opportunity any of us has to talk about the value that ACRP has to your airport, to your trade association, to your DOT, particularly with our congressional delegation, I strongly encourage you to take full advantage of that opportunity because, as we all know, it's not just the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but it's being able to document and to identify that this, I believe, is a wonderful program that's offered tangible, real-world results that have positively impacted the operations of airports and the performance of airport professionals. And I think that's a message that we need to communicate as loudly and as clearly and as frequently as we possibly can. So that would be my guidance to participants today. Keep your eyes peeled. Obviously, I'm not aware of any impacts on that sequestration will have on ACRP. That said, again, doesn't hurt to always be talking about the value that the program brings to the airport industry here in Florida and across the country.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And just briefly, before I load the evaluation, I'd like to draw attention to our next webcast 2 weeks from today on the 27th of June. Will be bicycle sharing presented by Lucas Cruz, so I hope you can join us for that. I'd like to thank Michael Audino for presenting and Bill Johnson for serving as our moderator. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending and participating and asking great questions. And so please complete the evaluation so that we can better understand your feedback and give us your suggestions for future topics.
And Jennifer, if I might, one more time to reiterate what Bill had mentioned early on. Again, I believe everybody is from Florida, so to the extent that you have any comments or observations on this webinar or this webcast format as a vehicle for future education initiatives, please let Bill know, both in terms of did you like it or dislike it, and if you have other topics that you might want to see discussed or talked about utilizing this format.
Thanks, Michael.
You bet, Bill.
Yes, thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.